with luck, we feel like it's this sort of external source, like lady luck. So lady luck's even personified. Luck be a lady tonight, all these things. And it's as if this sort of mystical thing might just sprinkle dust on you once, and then you're like, don't push your luck.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us and for being here. And we're very excited to talk to you all about your book and shame and all of your wisdom. I thought it would be a fun place to start off, just because, I was kind of having a look at all your stuff and I was checking out some of your videos. By the way, if there is snoring in the background, I was going to say, it's my dog. Not, Giles hasn't nodded off.
No.
I'm not. I have eaten. It's not my stomach.
Yeah, she's just looking up at us, hoping to get some food. I was having a little look at some of your stuff, and I saw a video that really resonated with me, where you were basically saying, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but you were sort of saying, don't let other people presume that you're lucky because you have, worked really, really hard, but also had the bravery to kind of step up and be seen. And I don't know why. Maybe it is because working as creatives, you get, Giles and I were talking about this in the car on the way up, you get a lot of people sort of talking about, oh, you're so lucky that you get to do that for a living, you're so lucky that you're so talented, you're so lucky that this and that. And I don't know, it's become a topic that really actually quite triggers me now. So I thought we could start off by talking a little bit about that.
Thank you.
And then go on to how you sort of got into this area and all about you.
I would love to, thank you. And thank you as well for saying triggering, because it's always triggered me.
Yeah. Oh,
and
good.
I find it wildly triggering when people say you're so lucky.
Yeah.
Like, you have no effing idea. Like, literally, you have no idea. And the people that call you lucky, and sometimes I find it more triggering, like family members will say it to me. And I'm like, what?
You know.
Like, you of all people know that I've had CPTSD from my childhood and like the violence and divorce and everything else. And to call me lucky, I just think it invalidates the work.
Yeah.
I feel like when people say, look, I do actually, so I'm going to completely contradict myself here. I do feel like quite a lucky person. I do, I feel like things do tend to kind of go into flow for me. But again, I know that I'm the one creating it. Like, we were just talking off air about the book coming out, about your exhibition coming up. And that doesn't just happen. And right now I'm having this constant battle with my inner critic, like constantly just telling me, don't bother. Like, the book's out in 3 months from when we're talking. Don't bother. It's way too hard. Like, look at the people that are getting into the bestseller charts. They've got huge audiences. They're on every show imaginable. Just don't bother. Like, that you haven't got enough time. You're not going to get there. Don't bother. And I am literally having to pull myself back onto my own lane every day, going, you are going to do this, and you're going to make yourself really proud of whatever you do, and whatever comes out of the sides or the back or something else from doing this, you're going to stay committed. And so when someone turns around and says you're lucky, I find it really offensive, actually, and really triggering.
Yeah.
And then I also think I was interviewed last week from somebody, and, how did you do that? And you don't want the answer. Because the answer's really
hard,
boring.
Yeah.
Because the answer is,
work.
I haven't been out with any of my friends in months. Like, my two best friends were like, when are we going to see each other? I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, my book's Unapologetic. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
I feel like and they're amazing. Like, yesterday I was speaking at a big event and they just both sent me my own story. I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Like, so proud of you. I know, and it's just incredible. And I'm not socializing. I'm not doing anything. Like, I am 100% committed to this above everything else. But people want me to say, it's a hashtag I just pulled forth from my vagina, and there it is. And it immediately got me 300,000 followers.
Yeah.
Use it. Just use it. That was all I did. No one wants the answer, which is every single day. And I mean, weekends, evenings, every day, I have shown up, and I keep showing up, no matter how tired I am or, like, frankly, exhausted to my core, and I will keep doing it. And yes, some opportunities come on the back of that, but it's because I've knocked on 100 doors to get one to open, and I've done that for years. So I do find it quite triggering when people call me lucky.
I'm going to give you some advice that I've picked up. I started doing this when I play tennis, and sometimes, if you like hit a good shot, someone will go, oh, that was lucky. So now when someone says to you, you're so lucky, you should just literally just say, yeah, lucky I'm so hardworking.
Yeah.
That's all you need to say. Lucky I'm so good at tennis. Because you do create your own. We were obviously having a bit of a debate about this, weren't we, in the car? Because I subscribe to like there's no such thing as luck. You create your own luck, even when things seem lucky. I think the only thing you can truly say is lucky is like whether you were born into like a wealthy family or not. But sometimes even being born into a family where
that's not always lucky.
No.
Is it?
Trauma. Yeah, but even
other
then,
expectations.
that can sometimes. Yeah, exactly. But I would say actually going through trauma and hardship has certainly made me, and probably you would say the same, into the sort of people that would go and chase our dreams. So actually that's lucky in a way. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only one that feels that way.
No, thank you for raising it, because I think so in my book I wrote so the way I got my book deal, the chapter I particularly focused in on was called Don't Push Your Luck, because we're giving them all these idioms. Be a good girl, don't push your luck. And I overheard it. I was in classic Marks and Spencer's with my daughter. And it was a couple of years ago. It was sort of back to school. I can't remember if it was after Christmas or September, but everyone was in there buying like packs of white school shirts and, like this flurry of like, And I heard this mum ahead of me and my daughter saying, like, can I have this, mummy? This was their child. And, don't push your luck. You've already had this and this. Like, don't push your luck. And I thought, wow, you're told that so young, and I was told that so young, not to push my luck, like, and to accept what? I mean, this mum was doing nothing wrong, right? And it's just something it's an idiom that we're given to carry, and I was definitely told it. I could see both of you nodding, and I just thought, my goodness, I said to my daughter, and which is completely backfired on me as a parent, and we chatted about it, and she's, sometimes she'll say something and I'm like, she'll go, you did tell me to push my luck, mummy, and I'm like, fair babe, you got me, you absolutely got me.
I am going to stay up for another half an hour.
She'll kind of give me a little look like, well, you did say to push my luck, and I'm like, I did, but I thought that we just sort of taught to minimise and around luck, and we kind of, with luck, we feel like it's this sort of external source, like lady luck. So lady luck's even personified. Luck be a lady tonight. All these things, and it's as if this sort of mystical thing might just sprinkle dust on you once, and then you're like, don't push your luck, or your luck's run out. You might say to me, oh, do you know what? I had this really great opportunity, or this was going to happen, or this person was going to attend my opening, and they can't make it now, and it's like, oh, my luck's run out. Like, how many of these sayings do we have? And it makes us feel like luck is something completely external and mystical, and that we can't measure or manage. And I do fundamentally believe it's like, the way that you show up for yourself every day, and you're just simply, it's probability. Like, we're creating the most opportunities for ourselves. I do also believe in the mystical and the occult. So I do think that we're bringing more of this back in as well for ourselves by just putting ourselves in more opportunities and positions. But I love that we're talking about this subject. I think it's something that a lot of people can resonate with.
Well, I take up what you're saying about the idea of it being mystical, like it's otherworldly, like, the fact that there's almost like we don't create our own luck, if you want to use the word luck. I mean, maybe we should stop using the word luck as a thing, because it does feel like a sort of mystical, spiritual, otherworldly device that we, that's adorned on certain people, but then not others.
So
in that respect, like it's an improbable thing.
Well, I suppose it's similar to people that are religious as well, or if you believe in a god that kind of makes decisions for you, like a god is going to decide whether you will be successful or not, and if you're not, then it's not meant to be, kind of thing. And I guess everyone has different beliefs, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is, on a day-to-day basis, we make a series of decisions that lead us to where we are, right? And gets us to a good place, or maybe a not so good place, but maybe even the not so good place is meant to teach us something. I don't know, I'm a terminal optimist, so I turn everything around into a positive. But
same. I have a Sagittarius moon, so I'm like, la la la, everything's great, everything's like lucky, unhinged and lucky.
I think that's the best way to be, though, because it probably will actually end up like that.
Because, when I first went to kind of coaching school, as I call it, in the States, and I'd been through a huge burnout, and I was just really trying to unpick a lot of armor, and I'd learned to repress my vulnerability, my femininity, everything through work. led to a huge burnout. And I went to like the most bizarre thing that I could do, but the biggest sort of personal growth push was to go to California and sit in a room of like top tier Californian business people and be like, let's talk about our feelings. And you're like, it's this sort of very British, very buttoned up, very keep calm and carry on, don't show emotions, never cry. That was me at the time. And one of the things they taught you, which actually was so helpful, I think around luck and also around rejection, was to collect no's. They literally said to you, you want to go out and you want to build a coaching business, you need to speak to 100 people and focus on collecting no's, because and it's really, at first you're like, I feel really awkward and this is horrible.
Charles is writing
Charles is like, collect no's. But you get the one yes, and that one yes will be completely right for you. And also it does start to desensitize you to rejection to a degree. If it's not right for someone, I've still had a really valuable conversation with you. I've still connected with you. I've still maybe practiced some of my skills, because obviously learning how to do coaching at this time, like many years ago. But that was also a way of kind of going, actually, like, how am I going to ever get the one client if I'm not even practicing and putting it out there to collect no's?
I love that. I feel like there's something to be said about that. I
could say you did something recently where you were allowing to be rejected. You were putting yourself in positions where you could have rejection.
I was supposed to do that.
Oh, okay.
It didn't last very long. I was like, I don't like this. I have a real aversion to rejection, to the point where I think a lot of people probably do. They almost self-sabotage to the point where they don't have to set themselves up for rejection or shame, or abandonment. And honestly, fear of success is equally as palpable as the fear of failure in some cases, because the more successful you become, the more seen you become, and the more open to rejection you are. So I did this experiment where I was like, every day I'm going to do something that allows me to be rejected, to become desensitized to it. But it is really hard. So I didn't do so well in that, but I did try. Yeah. But I think there's something to be said about that. And so in terms of the rejection, would you say that rejection and shame kind of link together? Are they sort of intrinsically entwined?
Yes, so definitely. And listening to you speak, there was so interesting. There's a lot going on in my mind. So I want to unpack it and try and be helpful to yourself and the audience listening, and try and give tangible things that people can use. So I did a lot of work previously around the inner critic. I was kind of known for talking about that. And our inner critic is the custodian of your comfort zone. Okay. So if you think about your comfort zone, your inner critic is patrolling it all the time. And the second you're about to break out of it, your big opening, or trying something new, rising up, your inner critic is going to go off. No, remember when you were 6, you did that thing and someone didn't come to your party? Or do you remember when you tried that and no one liked you? Or that one person that you didn't even really like said something mean about you and you felt bad for 2 days? Like, that is your inner critic. So the reason it behaves like that when you're on the precipice of making a change, or on the precipice of breaking out of your comfort zone, is because I do truly believe your inner critic, generally speaking, is a well-meaning friend that's just got it wrong, i.e. it's horribly unskillful when it speaks to you, because it just tells you all the, no, don't do that, don't do that. But what it's trying to do is to keep you safe the only way it knows how. And the only way it knows how to keep you safe is to keep you within the known, aka your comfort zone, right? So it's trying to hold on to you there because it knows you can't fail, you can't be judged, you can't be rejected. And that is why, if you think about doing a bungee jump or something like that, the thoughts racing through your mind right then, because you're really about to push out of your comfort zone. And for any of you that done a sporting endeavor or just something really big or bold in a different area, that often comes into your mind as a bit of fuel when you're about to do something different. You're like, well, I'm remembering the time I first went diving or something under the sea, and I was a bit scared when I'm turning up to do a talk on stage. And they're completely unrelated, but it just tells me and informs me that I did that hard thing once and I did it, and it's kind of, it can quieten down your inner critic. Now, having written the book on shame, when I wrote Unapologetic, which is all about unshackling your shame to reclaim your power, I have done a lot of work in the area of shame with my clients for years. But having gone so into detail of this, I now firmly and fundamentally believe your inner critic is also policing your shame. So it's kind of keeping your shame hidden. Shame thrives when we are alone. It tells you that your shame, we are ashamed of our shame. There's always something that, generally speaking, we're ashamed about. It's the thing that you really wish someone will not mention. Like, you're at a dinner party out with friends, you're digging your nails into your palm, like, please don't talk about that, please no one mention that. If I can just get through this interview without you asking me about this or that, or I won't have to lie or not show up or anything like that, that is shame. And your inner critic now, I think, when we have shame, that we are ashamed of, and we're trying to keep it hidden because our shame is a felt sense. We actually can't even put it into words. It's that disgusting sort of sticky tar that we're trying to move through. Then your inner critic is there, desperately not wanting anyone to see our shame that we're deeply ashamed of. So do you know what we should be? More perfect. More perfect. Let's mask. Let's be perfect. Let's stay within our comfort zone. Why on earth are you doing this great big, beautiful exhibition? Like, who on earth is going to come and see your work? Let's not be silly. Let's stay to something a bit smaller. Why don't you just put something out online once? And, you don't need to do that. Let's just keep ourselves safe. So it's this constant push-pull paradox of, you want to be seen, live your purpose, be visible, be in flow. And then there's this horrible pullback, like the back of your collar here, because you're about to do it, of, well, no, it's safer to be invisible. It's safer not to be seen. It's safer to stay where we are. And then if there is shame, this feeling of, we don't want to go anywhere near that. And we don't want anyone to see that. But what I want to say, and sort of what I wanted to offer from writing the book and from my own life, is I really feel that I've had two lives. One that was shameful. I was full of shame and behaviours, self-harm, things that were linked to that, low self-esteem, choices I maybe made associated with that. And then I very much feel completely shameless now. And to me, that's freedom, like absolute freedom. I am genuinely quite unhinged, I think, now in the most lovely way. Like, I don't. And again, I was asked last week about it. How do I know? And the way I know is I just don't think about it anymore. I don't worry about what I'm going to wear to this or to pick up my daughter from school or what people might say. I don't worry. Yesterday I was on a panel for this lovely event for ladies in their 30s and kind of no marriage, no mortgage, no problem. Like maybe you're... And I gave a talk and I talked about my divorce and shame and self-harm and all these things. And I had people running up to me afterwards were like, I've just gone through a divorce. I'm just going through a breakup. I've just been betrayed. And feeling like maybe it was too late. And I just want to sort of say to everybody that may be feeling anything and shame has somehow got a hold of you, you really can have a life without any shame at all. And it's so freeing and so liberating. And that is my wish for everybody.
Wow, it's like talking to my brain there. Everything you were saying, I was like, oh God, that's me. Yeah, I feel, first of all, I feel like I should have been at that panel the other day, at that thing you were at, listening along. Sounds right up my street. But yeah, it's so interesting. So when you're saying, you don't think about shame anymore, do you believe that shame can also be subconscious? Because one thing that I've kind of noticed with my exhibition, for example, previously I've always had those thoughts running around and around in my head, like, don't do this, what if this happens? Now I don't get the thoughts, I get a feeling in my body, and it's like I can feel it in my body, and it manifests in like waking up in the middle of the night with a busy brain, or suddenly getting a stomach ache. But I wouldn't associate with those feelings of like imposter syndrome and stuff like that, because they're not thoughts. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So our bodies and our systems are just so clever, and they will step in and save you from things sometimes. It maybe thinks it's doing a good job for you. So trigger warning, I'm going to talk about self-harm now as well, if anyone would like to not listen to this section of the podcast. I ritualistically self-harmed for many years. Particularly, it was very prevalent, shall we say, towards the end of my marriage. What I used to do was I used to scratch at my face twice a day in the shower until it bled. I did not know I was doing it. Now that sounds insane when you talk about a subconscious behaviour. I would kind of come round with blood on my fingers from this ritualised attack, where I now understand I was quite literally clawing off a mask that I was desperately trying to maintain, this sort of perfection. That all stemmed from childhood trauma, childhood of violence. My father was incredibly violent. My mother colluded, which meant I was unsafe in my home. So I had no safe person, and I was told I was bad. That's shame. My father punched me in the face in a restaurant when I was the same age that my daughter is now. She's 8. And I was told that was because of something that I'd said to him, because I was bad. So I believed that. These two people put on this earth to love me and care about me, I find me so bad That must be who I am. So shame, this felt sense within my system, becomes a lens that you see the world through. So I am bad was my shame statement. I am is your shame statement. I'm out of control. I'm a failure. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. I am helpless. I'm hopeless. I'm weak. Any of those things and more are shame statements. I am broken. Mine was I am bad. So then I'm choosing relationships. I'm choosing behaviors, activities. I'm choosing challenges or not based on this belief that I am fundamentally bad. And so that's how I kind of grew up. And then I would try to outrun my trauma in work. So I had a massive job. I'm working in property. I'm working in an unbelievably toxic environment way before Me Too. This is not me shame-hating guys either, by the way. The industry is incredibly hard for everyone to work in. I do believe it's still the biggest industry for men taking their own lives and issues with mental health. It's very tough to work in. I think it is changing, but I just want to sort of hold space for everyone's feelings there. But for me, I was clearly in an industry that was only going to exacerbate internal wounds that I held. I'm just focusing on earning money because financial security means I never have to go back there, i.e. the horrible, unsafe home. Like, I didn't have the Devil Wears Prada option where Andy got to go home at the end of it and go, oh, well, that didn't work out, Miranda, but I'm going back to my parents. Like, that was never an option. So I had to swallow down into my shame things, behaviours, a lot of things that were deeply inappropriate, being touched, being made to stay at certain events, all these sorts of things, because I had to keep people happy. Be a good girl. Be a good girl. I was such a good girl. And then you feel so ashamed of why you tolerated this, a fawn trauma response, whereby it's easier to placate than it is to fight or freeze, because that wouldn't have been available to me in those times. And then that manifested in my perfect marriage, which was a way of also kind of saving myself from, creating family from the ashes and what I didn't have with my own family. And when that started falling apart, that's when the self-harm started. So this subconsciousness, I understand now it was a silent scream. I write about this in great detail in the book, but I understand it was a silent scream. And as I say, the shower, which is where I did it, was a place I could shut the door. It was a room within my own home, but the only place I could feel like I was alone. And through working with my therapist, interestingly, I have waived my own anonymity in my book. My therapist has put, if you like, my files in there and her early experiences of me self-harming, because I want anyone that feels ashamed to know and to feel just a tiny bit of courage and permission that they can talk about it. So my own therapist with my own file, if you like, and her early expressions of me are in there. And I've waived my own anonymity so that people can read that, because I am so unashamed of my shame, and I want people to know that that's possible. But she helped me to understand that because of the violence in my childhood, and then when the pressures, if you like, of my marriage imploding and the anxiety all night, all morning when I was waking up was coming in, that relaxation isn't safe for me, or wasn't. And that's when I did it. I would do it in the shower, and I would do it when I was driving sometimes as well, because it was like a place that I would be, my brain would be taking me off to through the chronic anxiety and from the shame. So my work now, when I'm working with clients privately, working with PTSD, working on it's always the felt sense, the shame within their body. And then when we can work through some of these traumatic events using EMDR, when I'm working with clients to reprocess these things, I literally see it move out of their system. And it's just incredible. It's incredible to witness. And it was the most important and impactful piece of work that I did for myself as well. And yes, I realise now, and I can speak about it very openly now because it's a few years down and I've healed my insides, which is how it healed my outsides. But I've only just been able to start having facials. I felt very self-conscious because there were scars on my face, to be able to like barefaced show up to someone with a horrible light on you and, really vulnerable. That was something that I only just managed to do for myself last year. And I did a video about it and I put it on Instagram, and the responses, the comments, interestingly, would love your view on this, mainly from women. I do that too. I burn my legs in the shower. I've picked at my arms, my legs, it's a real thing with a real name. And when you know that, you feel less insane and alone, and you realise it isn't actually, it's a form of OCD and it is self-harm. And if anyone else is listening to this going, oh my goodness, because it took me that to go, oh my goodness, wow, there is a community to help you as well. And then I had the same amount of DMs from men. I do that. I didn't know there was a name. I thought I was going insane. Thank you for talking about this. But to me, that was, if you like, even more a demonstration of shame. And I understand why, but women were happy to comment where people could see their names. And I think because maybe we have a community and we speak a little bit more perhaps, and men messaged me privately because they still felt ashamed, very, very ashamed of the shame.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, it's, that's incredibly impactful and huge moments in your life. And I was going to say, obviously, that's a moment of vulnerability, and how big, and you obviously touched it on there a bit about obviously men being maybe less vulnerable sometimes, but vulnerability and owning your own vulnerability is kind of maybe one of the first steps you can take to starting to reclaim your shame.
Yeah, definitely. There's a story in my book is my own story like this, and sort of throughout my life. There's also expert interviews, which are fascinating. Body image. There's a bariatric surgeon from the States who talks about where he sees shame coming from, always childhood. Fertility experts, how the shame is heaped on. Wow. Oh, it's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I can imagine. Why
that was such an unbelievable interview that on the back of that, I had to spend a bit of time reprocessing some things that I had never been able to get my head around, and she gave me a name for in the space from the moment that at 16 you get the invitation to come and go for the first smears and cervical and pap tests, and how you're told that didn't hurt, did it?
I didn't go when I got mine. That's because of shame. I was like, I don't want someone looking down there. No. Yeah. It's so stupid.
And that you don't mind if they watch, do you? Well, actually, I massively do, but I feel like I can't, because you just told me that I don't mind. And then you've just told me this doesn't hurt. And it's, by the way, everyone, it's hurt me every single time. And I truly fundamentally believe as well, that's why people accept painful sex, because we're told these things don't hurt.
Yeah.
And so it must be me, because you've said it doesn't hurt. So I must be the one that it hurt. And so therefore there must be something wrong with me. So then I won't, I don't know how to reclaim my pleasure. Huge section on pleasure, massive interview with a holistic sex coach, a guy that's been working in the industry for 20 years. And I'm asking about when do people kind of come and question these things about pain, or if this is, or even a path, sex and pleasure being, able to be available in the same thing. But I also have my own clients have gone in with case studies and interview. And again, I'm going to massively trigger warning this because this is sexual assault. One of my clients has gone in. I was the first person she told that it was horrendous story. It's in the book, her story, like absolutely word for word, again, because I want people to read it. And it's quite an uncomfortable read, but it's real. And at the end of it, she says, you can admit this to yourself to start with. Exactly your point, Giles. The first step can just be admitting it to yourself in the mirror. I didn't deserve this, but this is what happened to me. And then after that, just by even allowing that thing, like I say, the thing that we all know, it's just living, it's here all the time. It's here all the time. It's threatening all the time. Just like just saying it to yourself aloud. And then she actually also recommended, if you want to go onto some forums anonymously, just even to read some things and just start the process of allowing this out, because as Brené Brown, the high priestess of shame, says, it cannot survive if you name it. And with the book, yes, it's my book, but it's called Unapologetic, and it's just to stop saying sorry all the time for being who we are and kind of being forced into these boxes. But I'm using other people's stories as well as my own, because I really do want to create a bit of a movement, actually, just where we understand that you can live without shame. You can have a life free of shame. And the reason I put all these examples and stories of my own in, and my own divorce lawyer's in there as well. I've got my divorce lawyer in there, got my therapist, got my divorce lawyer, like the most shameful things you could imagine I've put in there. Yeah. Because I want people to know that. I asked Mark, who's my lawyer, it's a beautiful interview. And I said, do you think people stay in relationships too long because of shame? And he said, absolutely. He said, and quite often you're asked to weaponize shame in divorce. One of the people will say, oh, look, put this word in or say that thing to them, because you're so intimate in relationship, and then you're going through divorce or separation, and that person that was, here to love, honor and obey you is now the other side going to betray you, and you're going to weaponize shame. And he said he feels really uncomfortable with it. It's not his way of doing it. He's an amazing lawyer. He said, but you do see it.
Wow. And yeah, I suppose with that, with all of the things that you mentioned, there is almost like a sense of failure as well, and the embarrassment comes up. I'm just thinking about like breakups that I've had, and I've never been divorced, so it didn't get quite as technical, but it was just the idea of telling my friends and family. It's like, oh my God, I think when I went through my last big breakup, I didn't tell my friends or family for like some of them months, because I was just like, no, everything's fine. It's not, no, I haven't failed in anything. You know, it's so interesting how we treat ourselves like this. And it would be remiss of me not to sort of touch on the self-love aspect, because I think a lot of it does come down to that. Because if you saw a friend or a loved one or your daughter acting that way, you would be their biggest advocate, and you would be like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You know, we can tell other people there's nothing to be ashamed of with that. But I think it's much harder to say it to ourselves, which is why saying it in the mirror is a great idea. But even when you said that, I was like, oh, that sounds really difficult.
Yeah.
It's harder than you would think. Right?
Yeah, even just admitting it out loud to ourselves. And thank you for sharing that, because I think I was speaking to a friend of mine last night, and she was telling me about another friend who's just gone through a breakup, but just gone through a breakup. Turns out he actually broke it off with her this Christmas and the Christmas before. We're filming this in February. She didn't tell anyone. And so there was gaslighting, there was other things going on, and didn't feel able to, you know, almost like got it back on track both times, to then have enough time to kind of, in her own mind, maybe process it, break it off with him, and then start telling people. And I think one of the sorries that we give is when we start getting emotional. As soon as you start crying, most of the time we'll say sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
So
you know,
true.
for getting emotional. And I think we almost want to be able to prepare ourselves to have a good conversation with people, to let them know something heart-wrenching about us, because we don't want to take up space with our emotion.
Yeah.
We don't want to be sloppy and untidy with our emotions. So I better get myself okay to be able to tell you. And then also in doing that, we can be denying the love from people that care about us. So I would always want to know if my friends are struggling, because I want to be able to be there for them and offer them my support and my love. And I've got a lot, I'm not going to use the word better, but I've really had to build the muscle of asking for help. It was very unnatural to me, obviously being a survivor and learning to be hyper independent and doing everything myself. And I've had to build the muscle of saying that I'm not okay. Either just asking for space, which is asking for help sometimes, and asking for help.
Oh, 100%. I still find that very difficult to do. I don't know about you do as well, I know.
Well, you know me. I am hyper independent. That is my lifelong struggle. But yeah, I've got a friend actually who, you know, she went through a rough time the past couple of years with a messy breakup, divorce, and, you know, stuff like that. And she sends me voice notes, and she'll still to this day be like, you know, I can tell she's just been crying, and she'll need to talk to me, and she'll be like, right, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to cry in this. You know, like she's, you know, it's like she's giving me a warning, or a, you know, prepare yourself, because my emotion is so shameful that, you know, I shouldn't be feeling it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. I feel like I really hope that there is a revolution in shame, because it's not something that I really think about on a day-to-day basis, but it's something we all have, and possibly impacts and potentially ruins a lot of people's lives.
Definitely, because it denies connection. Because we are ashamed of our shame, and we feel it. Like you say, we don't talk about it, and we maybe, because it is it is this felt sense. Like I give an example a lot when I'm interviewed, but for me it's so resonant. If I said to you, oh guys, do you know what, this morning, Monday morning, bit of a get out the door, school, you know, felt like it was a bit of a rush, didn't feel like I gave my daughter the right attention today, didn't do great today. That's me being guilty.
Right.
Me saying to you all of that, and then didn't do my best job today, guys. I am a bad mother. I feel nauseous. I feel nauseated. I'm making up an example. I know I'm not a bad mother, but that is shame. And if shame could get hold of me and persuade me that I would be acting out from that place, or rather I'd be so desperate to hide it that you'd then see me doing the bake sale, and do you know what I mean, you'd see me then on the board and doing the bake sale and all the other things, and like
I'm a governor now.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't possibly say that I'm shameful or I'm a bad mum, because I'm now a governor, and I've stopped doing the book, and I'm not going to wear sexy outfits anymore, and like I'm like that would be shame. So I'm just really, thank you for saying that, because I also hope there's a revolution. My editor, she said to me, she was like laughing because I think she was reading that. So there's like poems in there. It's quite. I lost a member of my family in June of last year, and I wrote something about grief and shame. It's long, but it's more of a poem about how, again, we think if I could just be perfect, like I'm not ready to do this right now. I just need to tidy up first, or I need to get this ready, or I'm not ready to look through that yet. I don't need to do that yet. You know, grief is also ending of relationships. Like you weren't ready. I'm not ready. I'm just going to get this perfect first. I'm just going to get rid of my emotion first. I don't want to take up that space with my messy, dirty emotions. I'm just going to get ready and do this perfectly. And if I keep doing this perfectly, then maybe I'll be okay. And it's like, no. And just sort of, so I wrote about that as well. And these endings and things that are coming out. And my editor said to me, she's like, you've invented a new genre. And I was like, I feel obviously I love that because I'm mischievous. So I was like, brilliant. And she said, because you've translated shame. No one before has given shame a voice. And like I say, I see this as way bigger than me. In the acknowledgements, the thing I say is this is way bigger than myself. It's everyone's stories. And people turning their pain into purpose for others is just extraordinary to me. So generous and so courageous. And that's what I want this to become. I want someone to read it. And then when their friend says, how are you doing? I want them to tell their friend a little tiny bit. Doesn't have to be everything. But if they feel confident enough to just say that much, along with the talking in the mirror, to me, I've done an amazing job if that's what happens.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, as a subject, obviously we're living in a digital age, right? So societal expectations are exacerbated. You know, we see every day on Instagram or TikTok, wherever it is, the levels of what we need to ascertain the perfect life. You know, do you feel like there is generally a rise in shame? Like there's been these problems are exacerbated. More people are becoming more vulnerable to shame.
I think it's interesting. I think it's probably transitioned. I think there were things that perhaps, we can talk more openly about sex, for example, because of social media. So, maybe our grandparents' generation would have been like, oh no, that would have been a very shameful subject. And religion and obviously areas and how you're brought up and communication around certain things change. I think shame has probably, if you think about yourselves, like any things that you haven't done, disconnections, places where you've been performing in any regard, work, relationship, friendships, family members, I think shame is usually at the root of it, definitely not at the heart, but shame will take roots, and then it before long you don't realize that, like a weed and how deep it's gone, how much you can pull out. The beauty is though that there is a cure for shame, which is great news.
Oh, thank God.
Great news. There's a cure for shame. And it's self-compassion. But it's remarkably difficult to give you the compassion and the empathy that we can dole out to others. So I can listen to everything you're saying, both of you, and your friend that wanted help, and we're like, wow, I really wish you just don't say sorry for crying and give me the voice note and load it on me and don't worry. And yet with ourselves, we're like, oh no, I better not do that. So it's very, very difficult to turn the lens on ourselves. But when you do release this shame, and if you think about a weed, you pull all the roots out with it. I literally see it with my clients. They just suddenly in the moment go, there was nothing else I could have done. It wasn't my fault. I was never unlovable. The things they say in that moment when shame has left their system, it just creates a vessel for self-compassion. So I do want to encourage anybody listening just that there really is that cure, and it is self-compassion. And again, it can start with just saying out loud, I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve it.
Yeah. And let's just touch on a little bit, because we've spoken a lot about how shame sort of manifests in being ashamed of our failures, and I use that word, quote unquote failures, what we perceive to be failures, shame in stuff that's happened to us in childhood, or shame that in events. How do you see shame cropping up in terms of self-sabotaging, so preemptive behaviours, when it comes to relationships, work? And, we've kind of come full circle here, because we started the episode talking about how people were like, oh, you're so lucky. But actually it comes from a bravery and being seen and stepping up. But you see a lot of people that don't do that, that don't step up, that don't want to be seen, and that do self-sabotage. How does that kind of crop up when it comes to shame?
It's a beautiful question. Thank you. So like I said at the beginning, I'm having to hold myself onto my lane right now and not listen to my inner critic to pull me off and that probably would link to an old belief about myself that maybe that I am bad or that I'm unworthy or unlovable in some way, and I'm a bit tired, so it's more likely to get hold of me, maybe, which is why I'm having to constantly pull myself back in and be like, no, it's not true. That's not true for you anymore, and the rest of it. But I think, anything that we have shame about, which is often unconscious because it is this feeling, to be able to explore these feelings a bit more however anyone wants to. Like, you know, my book's obviously amazing, but like there's, you know, however people want to, if you're a body-based person, connecting with yourself in that way, if it's meditation, if it's, you know, walking, talking to a friend, doing mirror work like we're talking about, whatever it might be, making the unconscious a bit more conscious, a bit more sort of visible, tangible, whatever would help somebody. But the self-sabotage is so interesting, because if inherently you have a belief about yourself that's negative, let's go with I am hopeless. Okay, let's have that one. So if that is your inherent limiting belief that you're seeing the world through, you're going to come across challenges, and that's going to be the belief that's within your system. The inner critic's going to act out on that, and the inner critic is your invitation to sabotage. Oh, don't bother. Just don't bother. They've done it. Look. Oh, there's no point. They've done exactly what you've done. Oh, someone else has got there first. Oh, you're too late. There's no time. You're too late. You know, they have all the helpful excuses, almost like pick one. You know, pick one. Which one do you want today? Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'll do that one instead. Just stay in bed. It's safer for you there. So that is where it's coming out from all the time, because again, our inner critic wants to protect us at all costs from rejection and the pain that we might associate with that. There's always this study that's around, which is that we fear rejection as number one as humans, and our own death is like number 7. Like death of a loved one is like 2 or 3. Yeah. So like our own death is about 7. Number one fear is social rejection. Wow. And that stems back from sort of the times when we lived in community, as I'm sure you guys know, and the listeners, but you know, to be ostracized was death. Because if we're living and sharing our resources, because I need water, safety, food, fire to survive in the time when we're communally living, which we don't anymore, but our software hasn't got the iOS update that we needed to say, actually, it's perfectly fine for me at 43 to live alone with my daughter and my cat. It's all right. I'm not going to, you know, I don't need to like revert to some of these behaviors. But I would say that the more, so it's a complete paradox, because if you're feeling the urge to self-sabotage, going back, it could mean that you're right on the edge of a change. So check in where you are, because your inner critic is throwing the kitchen sink at you when you're on the edge of making a change. So, you know, when you're thinking about leaving a relationship or putting yourself out there in a really big way or doing something differently, your inner critic is like, rah, 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 you know, alert, 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 and it's throwing everything it's got at you. So check in. Is it because I'm at the very edge of my comfort zone about to dive off? Take it as a compliment. One of the things you can do is you can remind that little inner critic of times that you have taken the leap of faith and it's worked out well. So, hey, listen, do you remember that time that it doesn't have to be massive. I didn't do an Iron Man or whatever. Like, you know, remember the time that we did that particular podcast episode and we didn't do that before? Do you remember the time that I tried that post style? Do you remember the time that I got my hair cut? And like, you know, whatever it might be, or I did go out for that dance class I didn't know I would enjoy. It doesn't have to be like this huge massive thing. Just remind your inner critic and you will feel it come down. You'll literally feel it lose its charge. It's like, oh yeah, you're right, we did do that and it did work out okay. That's what I mean. It does want you to be okay. So that's one thing around self-sabotage. The other interesting piece of sort of work with self-sabotage is it's often linked to our childhood beliefs that we received at our home or sort of from caregivers. So good old England, money doesn't grow on trees, or how about, well, that sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, we're so what's the word? Pessimistic.
Right. So if you think about it, we're all laughing because I think we all heard it in our childhood from somewhere, from a you know, a caregiver or a grandparent or a well-meaning person, and like, well, that sounds, this great things happen. Well, that sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I better look for the fault in it. So if you've received these kind of messages, it's worth exploring. Maybe just, you know, what were some of the things that I can really remember, like money, success, putting yourself out there. Like, what were the, you know, who were people in your childhood that you maybe saw doing that? Oh, well, she's wacky auntie so-and-so doing this, like, you know, working in art, you know.
I am the wacky auntie.
There you go.
I'm the hippie of the family that's like the spinster woman.
Yeah, there we go. You can borrow my cat. Like, it's absolutely fine. But, you know, those are the sorts of beliefs that if you go back and explore them, we don't realise how much of it we're carrying. And so when we get to basically all the lights are turning green, and then we pull our own rug. And we self-sabotage. I mean, it happens, like, I joke about this, but like, you can be starting to date someone, it can be going really well, and then for some absurd reason, you get the urge to message an ex or reply to one that you never would. And it's like, why would I do that? I'm not even remotely interested, like, never been in, you know, whatever. This is going brilliantly, but you know, I'm ashamed of my shame. At some point, this is going to come out. They're going to realise I'm the wacky, crazy auntie with the cat. And so I might as well pull my own rug now by doing some self-sabotage behaviour. So it's worth looking into those two things. Is it? I'm right on the edge of making a massive change and I know my inner critic's going off, in which case I'm going to give you some examples, literally like a dossier of evidence. Times we tried something hard and it worked out okay. And then the other side of it is this something, a belief from my childhood or like sort of programmed into my being? And let's just have a look at where that is either showing up and limiting me and I'm sabotaging, and then again we can give it some evidence for how that's not true for me.
It's like a muscle, isn't it? I suppose,
Completely.
as well. You've got to keep flexing that trust muscle, and it's kind of similar to, well, it's like anything, isn't it? When you're practicing something, if you're doing it constantly in like some small way, eventually it just becomes second nature. And you find yourself you not having to try so hard. It's like people that like put a smile on their face when they're not happy, and then eventually they realize they're actually smiling or they're laughing or whatever it is. So yeah, amazing. Thank you for that advice. That was, because self-sabotage is something I think we can all relate to, but I for one certainly can. I feel like this has just basically been a therapy session for me. Giles just sat there like
No.
Making notes.
Written down, what was it? Shopping for no's.
Collecting
those, yeah.
So on a more practical level, so if someone's, listening, they're, this is something that is really prevalent in their life, what would be like a few first steps that you would start to go through with, potential clients or someone? What would be some advice you give? Obviously, we've talked about talking in the mirror, being vulnerable. What kind of things would you sort of put out there for a first few steps for someone who's looking to sort of start to vanquish the shame demons?
Yeah, thank you. I think most of the time we do know where we're standing in our own way. I think we know where we get in our own way, and so what look at that and just be really honest about that. Now there's two different approaches. I do coaching and trauma therapy, and I will merge the two with some clients, but they're two very different, distinct things. And like everyone seems to be a coach right now, everyone. So I just want to say that coaching is unbelievable and amazing. I have executive clients. I still do a lot of work with executive clients, and it's great. And coaching is incredible if you have a clear goal. I want to get that promotion, leave a relationship, get a relationship, do have a fitness goal, something like that. It's fantastic, because when you're working with a coach, you have an accountability partner and we can work towards achieving that goal. A therapeutic approach is very different, and I would say that is more required when you keep coming up against yourself. Why am I repeating these patterns? Why is it that, I'm motivated and I get to a certain place and this happens? Why am I maybe attracting the same kind of people or relationships? Or you're feeling that some of the things I've said are resonating, in which case that is a time I would say to approach a professional in whatever capacity, because they're two different things. So, I think there's a lot of information about coaching, and I am a big fan of the coachy stuff, but they are very separate. And for me, unlocked when I went into doing more of the therapeutic work. There are amazing online forums. You don't have to spend money on this. YouTube is a great resource, and I mean I've got a free masterclass on the inner critic on YouTube. Go and watch it. It's like an hour long. It's just me going through everything I've just said in great detail with practical steps. And a lot of people also are giving out generous content, I think, with some really good tangible things. Find someone you like and maybe stick with them. Listen, if it resonates to you, go on YouTube, like I say, and use it. We don't need to kind of spend all this money. I think, again, I interviewed someone with my book, my friend Radhika, who's an amazing, he does kirtan, so doing the mantras and the chanting, and quite often I receive a lot of grief for that. My friends are like, oh, you're off to your cult? And I'm like, because I'm doing going off to go and chant some mantras in a hall with people who just seem really happy and nice. And I asked him about it. I was like, why do people kind of bring you down when you're doing something a bit different?
Make you feel shameful.
Right, well, try to.
Yeah.
I'm too high to feel shameful. I'm too woo on mantras.
I get shamed for eating healthily.
Right.
Like, people are like, oh, you're a rabbit food. I'm
That's
just
mental,
looking after
isn't
my
it,
body.
really?
Like,
that
what?
Is mad that
Yeah.
anyway.
Really? Yeah, anyway, sorry.
But it's other people's discomfort, because they
Yeah.
look at me. I took my daughter, she loves it. We're just going along and singing some mantras in a nice room full of nice people.
Sounds great.
Right. Yeah. Like it was brilliant. My boyfriend said, I came back from one of them and he was like, I don't think I've ever seen you this like activated and happy. And it was just really joyful thing to do. But Radhika's an amazing man and human and lovely, lovely friend. And he's one of the people in my book that I've interviewed. And I said to him, I feel like when we're going through a period of transition, this is what I want to offer to the audience for tangible. We feel like we get a lot of tests at once. That was certainly my experience. It was the destruction of my marriage. It was on lockdown. It was the business is bombing, single parenting, issues with my own family, obviously not being supportive, my immediate family. I had a massive frenemy betrayal, like huge. It just seemed to all, then some very disappointing dating post-divorce. It just seemed to all be at once. You're like, wow, I can weather one test. I'm kind of being given all 8 at once, and this is just too much for me to bear. It just felt too much. And I asked him about that. I said, why is it that we seem to, be given these tests at once? And he gave me this example, and he said it was from like a guru in a story whereby we kind of start digging. We're told that there's water, there's this like stream under the earth, and so we do a little bit of digging, breath work, and like we didn't get there, so we stop, and then we go to the next one, and we're like changing our eating, so we do a little bit of that, and we're like, oh, didn't get there, so we stop. And you go along, and maybe it's meditation, therapy, something else, walk in nature, whatever, right? And he said if you just stuck to the one, if you just kept digging, your hands would start to get moist, and then you'd eventually feel the water, and you'd have your hands in the stream. And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. So a practical thing I'd like to give to your audience is be unapologetically yourself. Find the thing or a thing that you can maintain and do that brings you joy and or healing and or fulfillment or makes you feel like you. Don't apologize for how you choose to eat, move your body, use your mind, what you consume. You do that for you, and sure enough, your hands will start to feel moist.
Oh, I love that. And I was thinking of like that idea of like it's always darkest before the dawn, and how like it is always, you said that you had that kind of clusterfuck of stuff going on for you, and how that often is the case actually. And it, just before it starts to turn to something good, it often can be very, very intense.
I find that, honestly, sorry to interrupt, but I find that those are the times in my life when I've had my own, I've maybe like once or twice had a clusterfuck where it's like you lose your job and a partner and this happens. And I think a lot of people had that during lockdown, for example. Lots of relationships lost, lots of jobs lost, lots of deaths and stuff. I always find that the time that comes after that, what has always been the most fruitful. I had a therapist once that used to say shit makes great fertilizer.
Oh, I like
so
that.
True. It was like all the times in my life that have been really hard have led me on a path to greatness.
Yeah, I guess it's the period of healing.
Yeah, you work on yourself. I mean, a lot of people, we talk a lot about the fact that a lot of people don't do proactive steps to work on themselves until they're at that rock bottom. Yeah. So sometimes you need to get to that point before you start, going to therapy or doing breath work or whatever it might be. And we shouldn't be like that. We should be more proactive. But I think it is tricky. We were talking about it before we started recording with people, they've got jobs and families and lives and they're busy, and there's lots of people telling you should be doing this, shouldn't be doing this, eat this, don't eat this. And it's hard, and people get worn out, I think, by it, don't they?
Definitely. And I think also I'd like to just hold some space. There's a lot of time that you are absolutely betrayed as well. Like I had a gorgeous girl run up to me yesterday at the end of this session, and she found out her boyfriend of years was cheating on her with a lady that's married with kids, and he has just been, and they had to stay living together, and she was moving out. She's moving out today. Good luck, darling. Good luck, babe.
Yeah.
Literally. God. Good luck, babe.
Yeah.
May this be the new chapter. And she was like, he still criticizes everything I'm doing. She said to me, I've taken on shame. I feel like I should have been able to do more to keep him or keep him happy. And I was like, darling, I look at you too. I was like, darling, no. I said, look, I'm going to get this wrong, and I'm going to get it wrong as well. But sometimes when the clusterfuck is happening, I saw this post, and it was like, from the universe, and it was like, if I hadn't have moved them out of your way like that, you would have kept trying to make it work. So and I was like, wow, I've still got the heebie-jeebies now. And I thought, you never know what you're being saved from. And you're right, there were situations that I would have kept trying to breathe life into, the wrong friendships that were jealous of me and turned out were not friends at all, and actually like proper bad vibes, that or would have not led to the right work opportunities, other things, like definitely spending time like trying to like breathe life into a failing relationship when my soulmate I'm very happy with was kind of waiting down the line for me, but you don't know it in that moment. The only thing you have is trust, and you just have to find that moistness in the soil for you that tells you that you're going to be okay no matter what. And I think that's the end of the clusterfuck, is like, okay, well, I literally have had all of this thrown at me, and I did get through it, and I may have, like, some friendships may have shifted, some things about me have shifted because they had to, not because I would have chosen to maybe have that path. But what it showed me is I could do that. I wouldn't choose it again. But if I was faced with any of those things now, I'd be like, right, okay, back to basics, sleeves rolled up. We've been here before. I wouldn't choose to do it again. I don't think I will, but I know how to navigate it now. And I showed up for me and my daughter in a way that I actually wouldn't have maybe believed or thought I could have done. And so I refer back to that. That is my benchmark now. Yeah. So my benchmark is so much higher than it was before the clusterfuck, because I now know, you know, that I have shown up for me in that way. I learned so much about myself, people, places and things in my life that either were or were not aligned. No fault or judgment, just, you know, it sorted itself. Like the sorting hat got busy quick, you know, and it does it really quickly now as well. I can have someone that I meet in the morning, by the evening I know if they're coming or going in my life. Very quickly I'm shown if they're a match for me or not. Very grateful for that now. You know, at first it was a bit oh god, you know, it felt really horrible when people are swept off your path, and now I'm very grateful. I'm like, okay, cool, you know more than me, thanks.
That's the thing. There's a phrase, the universe is in rooms that you're not in. It knows, you know, it's hearing conversations that you're not hearing. But we feel like we need to be in control of our own lives, so it's like, no, I know best, this is my soulmate and I will be with him even though he's, you know, treating me like crap. Exactly. Oh god, honestly, I feel like we could talk all day, and I feel like it's gone about, it feels like about 10 minutes has passed, but it has been an hour.
Wow.
But yeah, please tell our listeners all about your book.
Oh, thank you.
And if they can pre-order it, and where to find you, your socials, all of that stuff.
Thank you so much. Please pre-order the book. The pre-orders changed my life. I'm happy to be really vulnerable here. I hadn't appreciated quite how much pre-order mattered but this is my first rodeo in publishing, and that will genuinely change the trajectory of this book. And as I've mentioned, I don't believe this is my book as such. I really do think this book needs to be out there, because I want shame not to be in people's lives. At the end of the book, you get it in hard copy, there's a page and it's a poem. I won't say all of it, but it ends with, sorry not sorry, I offer here my last apology to myself, and you sign it. And it's like a way of you kind of, you know, really going into all the times that we did apologise for something about us, where we felt that we weren't enough just as we are, or we gave parts of our autonomy away, and you physically sign it. That's kind of the way this book ends. So I really want people to have that experience for themselves as well. Gift it to someone that needs it. Let's get it out there. It's also just utterly beautiful. It's like a spell book. You'll love. It's spooky.
Yeah, I got goosebumps just on my leg.
It's stunning. So please, everyone pre-order that now. It's available on Amazon, and let's make Jeff Bezos richer as well. But it's also in all other stores in the UK too. So you'll see it if you're not an Amazon fan. To find me on socials, Annalie Howling on Instagram is the biggest platform. I think it's where we're both connected. Have got a TikTok that's going to get switched up quite soon. Actually, it'd be quite fun to follow me on there. We're going to start doing a bit of a divorce parody, the club that you never wanted to join, but where you know, unless it really is, if you know, you know. So there's going to be a bit of like parody stuff on there for divorce. And then, as I mentioned, the YouTube, if people want some free resource, there's 2 masterclasses on there that I've just put out, and as well for pre-ordering the book. People that do pre-order, please do. If you screen grab the pre-order, we're going to start doing some events. I'm going to start doing some early book club, some read through. I want to do some things around shame and self-love. So we're going to do a couple of events, probably March onwards. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but yeah, please pre-order, screen grab it, and we're going to do some events for people.
Fantastic. Amazing. Well, it's going to be amazing. I know the book's going to be fantastic. Can't wait to read it. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.